I found the change really, really hard to deal with. That came up with the autism. Are you resistant to change? Having a baby is the biggest change that you could possibly have in your life. It changes everything. My mind got flooded with the darkest thoughts you could think. Am I a secret serial killer and I don't know it? Am I a malicious person who wants to hurt children? Has giving birth broken my brain to the point where I'll never be who I was before?
How long was this nightmare going on?
2.5 years.
Why did it stop?
It didn't.
We've had such a great response to the podcast, and so many of you have been in touch asking what you can do to help. It's really simple. Just follow, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. That way we can reach more people, and that way we can celebrate these great minds that think differently. If you've ever binge-watched a British teen classic, you will definitely know our next guest. From Wild Child to Angus, Thongs and Perfect Snogging and Fresh Meat, Kimberley Nixon has had an incredible career on screen. But it's her honesty off-screen that struck such a chord with so many. After becoming a mum during the pandemic, Kimberley was diagnosed with perinatal OCD, and she's since been really open about her struggles, her recovery, and now her ongoing journey exploring possible diagnoses for autism and ADHD. She's using her voice to make the hidden stuff more visible, and I couldn't be more excited to have her on. Just a heads up, in this episode, we do touch on some difficult topics, including mental health. Let's get into it. Let's see how great minds think differently. Kim,
Yeah.
can you give me 3 words to describe your brain?
Can you swear on this?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Right in the deep end. Okay, like a rabble. If I was to draw it, it would just be a scribble like that. But it can be noisy, foggy,
Okay.
and
That's 3.
yeah.
Do you like your brain?
It's a really interesting question because I think I've always fought my brain.
Okay.
It's always felt like a fight. It's always felt like me and my brain. And I remember like my husband always saying, there's not you in your brain. Like you are you. And I'm like, no, it's not like that in there. And because I've had my mind for my whole life and I've never been in anyone else's,
Sure.
just like everyone else.
Yep.
You don't know what's normal or not. So for a very long time, I thought, oh, maybe everybody thinks like this. Or maybe, and I'm not talking about content, I'm talking about way of thinking. And then when I got a bit older and I realized that probably wasn't the case, I tried to be like everybody else. But it was always a sort of struggle. It was always a fight. Like I would just try and have like a nice day and it felt like my brain was trying to sabotage that.
How do you think other people think?
Simpler.
Okay.
Other people just seem to get on with stuff.
Yeah.
And not analyze every single tiny thing and not go down 50,000 rabbit holes in a space of a 15-minute conversation. Now I'm older, I know that that's not true, and that you always think, I definitely found that out around motherhood, thinking that everybody else is just nailing it and getting on with it and lovely pictures on social media.
Yes.
And then you realize actually when I kind of threw out on my social media, does anyone else find this really hard? It was just a deluge of people going, oh my God, yes. And actually everyone does. And the most together person ever, if they're a mum or if they're an actor you admire, actually when you ask them how they are and they say, yeah, okay, and then you say, how are you really? It'll be like, do you know what, this is going on or that's going on or it's a family thing or I'm just really down at the moment. I don't really know why. And so it's never simple. It's never like the grass is always greener. But I do understand now that my brain does work differently to the majority of people around me. There obviously are exceptions. But then even within that spectrum, I probably don't think the way that you think. I don't think the way that my niece thinks. She's autistic. That's how I got involved with a National Autistic Society and stuff. Originally, never thinking it had anything to do with me.
Yeah.
It was just me wanting to help her and understand her better. And then suddenly things just start slotting into place. And then you start looking at your family and then you start seeing things everywhere. And so now, do I like my brain? Yes. I do. And it's a really hard one thing because for such a long time I fought it. And when I became really unwell with a really severe OCD episode after I had my little boy, I hated it. Well, I thought it hated me. I thought, why are you trying to ruin what is supposed to be the most amazing time of my life? Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
Have I been, like, it felt magical in a way. Like, have I been cursed? Someone's brought the curtain down here. Once I got the OCD diagnosis, which I never thought had anything to do. Well, I'd see OCD on TV, never once thought, oh, I think I might have a bit of that. It never had anything to do with me the way that it was shown in films and TV.
Let's just break that down. Pre you being pregnant, where did OCD fit within your conscious?
Even being the day before I had my son, massively pregnant, probably in some kind of lockdown. If we were watching something and OCD came up, to me, that was possible germaphobe, neat freak, impossibly tidy, clinical, all those things. I'm not any of those things. I'm the most organized, messy person I know. Like, if there's any organizational stuff going on within the family, it's me. Like, I know dates, I know all those things. I've got that mapped out in my brain. But then if you looked at my bedroom, like, my husband calls it Hurricane Kimberley because he's just like, if I cook something, it's
hurricane.
It's like a hurricane. It's honestly, it looks like something's happened here. And it's like the aftermath. And I've never had a problem with germs, never been worried about anything to do with that. Just never resonated with me, never thought it had anything to do with me. And then when I was having terrible OCD episodes when he was a baby, and I started looking into it because that was flagged to me, and then I was diagnosed with it.
Who flagged that to you?
I found an article in the middle of the night, kind of 6 months deep into this really, really bad mental health crisis on Mind. And it was an anonymous person writing about postnatal OCD and about scary thoughts surrounding babies and children and your baby and your child. And that was the first little glimmer of something, because I hadn't been fitting into anything. They'd been trying to fit me into like postnatal depression. I wasn't ticking any of those boxes. I wasn't sad. I was scared. I wasn't listless. I was hypervigilant.
Yes.
My mind didn't stop for, basically the best part of 2.5 years. So I flagged that. I said to my nurse, I've read this and this is the only thing that feels like it's sounding right. And then they started looking down that, and then I got diagnosed.
And so this is perinatal OCD.
Yeah.
This is, from what I've learned, 2 in 100.
Yep.
I'd never heard of it before.
Never heard of it.
You'd never heard of it before.
I've sat with perinatal mental health professionals who have never heard of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you know about perinatal OCD that our listeners need to know?
When I first started experiencing it, I'd never heard of it. And I genuinely thought I'd gone mad. I thought my brain had broken. I thought that the day before I had my baby, lovely, full of lovely hormones, so ready to meet him. He was IVF. We were just ready, we were ready to bring him home and to become a family. To then the moment he was born, it was like the lights were switched out. I can't explain it. It just plummeted. And then because of COVID, I was stuck in hospital by myself for quite a few days. And I think that if my husband would have been able to come in and see me, he'd have flagged with someone, that's not her.
Okay.
But I wasn't surrounded by anyone who knew me. So nothing was really picked up on, and I was too scared to say anything.
But you felt immediately different.
I felt different. I was absolutely terrified that I was going to do something wrong, and that I was going to do it either accidentally or on purpose, but against my will.
Yeah.
In some way that would be irrevocable. We could never go back. And that my mind got flooded with the darkest thoughts you could think. It was kind of like Clockwork Orange, with the eyes in my mind, seeing the darkest things that people can do. And then you bring in this new baby, and what if any of that happens to him?
Can you give me an example?
It's very difficult because it starts off quite naturally in that, of course, so you've never had a baby before, you're given this tiny newborn baby, you've just gone through this huge physical thing that you can't really describe, and oh, am I doing this right? Am I feeding him right? Is he getting enough? Is he the right temperature? Has he got enough layers on? Has he got too many layers on? What if he's under a blanket and I pop to the kitchen, when I come back, he's overheated or he can't breathe, and he's basically, it would end with him dying in every scenario.
Okay.
So in a way that was natural, and because my husband was having that, oh God, how do you hold them? And in the first bath and the temperature, and are we going to burn him?
They're so fragile.
Of course, they're so tiny. And really the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
You're the parent now.
Yeah.
I think there's like intrusive thoughts reported in about 98% of new parents.
Okay.
Because of course they are.
Sure.
Because you've been given an incredibly precious, fragile thing and you're risk assessing. Where that went awry with me was that it didn't stop. It just didn't stop. There was nothing ever put an end to it.
Even though all those firsts have happened. You've had the first bath. You changed the first nappy.
But if it's this time?
Okay.
What if it's this minute? I know the last 5 minutes have been fine, but what if I snap in the next minute and I black out and I do something horrendous? What if I'm so tired when I'm giving him a bath? You were up early with with one of your kids. My son was up all last night. My husband and I were just up all night with him crying. And it's really, the next day it's kind of like you're like walking through water. And in that newborn phase, it doesn't let up.
Yeah.
So you're talking like 6 weeks of absolutely no sleep whatsoever. You're not cognitively working at a normal level. What if I'm so tired that I look away for a second, or I sort of nod off for a second, and when I wake up, he's under the water, or he's fallen off the table where I'm changing him?
So real like high anxiety and real high levels of fear.
Yeah.
Repetitive thoughts.
Yes.
Of going literally
in a circle.
Yeah, worrying that the same thing might happen.
Yeah. A thought popping in, me latching onto it, me trying to analyze it. What does it mean? How can I stop it from coming true? Okay, I sort of stopped it from coming true in the real world, but did I want it to come true within me? What does it mean about who I am? Am I a secret serial killer and I don't know it? Am I a malicious, awful person who wants to hurt children?
Do I even want this baby?
Yeah, exactly. Has given birth broken my brain to the point where I'll never be who I was before? Has this been a terrible mistake?
Yes.
And when you're holding this long awaited for baby, the amount of guilt that comes with that, because they're here and he's healthy and he's perfect and his everything is, and I know we're so lucky in that. But you're terrified. You're terrified to go near them, to touch them, to hold them, to be alone with them. Whereas my husband's a very neurotypical person, where his would sort of, I've done this. I get it. Okay, I know.
In the groove.
Yeah. I know last time that was a bit too hot. This time it's perfect. Yes. I know last time he doesn't like it when you put blankets on him, he kicks them off. I'll do this. Just learning as you do with anything, like learning to drive a car. You just get a bit better each time.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I just went off on a roller coaster, and a never-ending roller coaster. And every time it would kind of come back in to the little station where you could get off the ride, I was locked in. And
gotta go again.
I've got to go again. But it's like my family were on the platform, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I'd gone. And then I'd come back round and I'd have moments of, it's not lucidity, that's not the right word, because I was lucid, but of just coming out of my brain and kind of locking eyes with my husband going, what's going on? Help me, gone. And then back into it.
And what did you put it down to? What were you thinking that this was, other than, oh my God, my brain's broken?
I thought my brain being broken would be the best case scenario, because it would mean something's happened to me. What I really thought was, you're a really bad person. You're a really bad person and you shouldn't be anywhere near your son. That's what I really thought. And I couldn't understand where it had come from. I'd had nieces and nephews. I'd loved being an auntie. And we tried so long. I'd always wanted to be a mother. We tried so long, and then he was here and it was happening, and it should have been perfect. And it wasn't. It was, I've said before, it was like living in the upside down in Stranger Things. It was like I was in my house, in my living room, but it wasn't really. It was like an upside down version where everything was darker and a bit more, everything was sinister. My husband once said to me that it's sort of like my hard drive got corrupted. So I was seeing everything through a corrupted lens.
Yes.
So every time I wanted to, my brain was making everything kind of, see, there we go again, me saying my brain is something else. But it felt like my brain was making everything sinister. If my baby was doing something wonderful and cute and I wanted to give him a little touch and a little hug, my brain immediately went, why do you want to do that? Why? What's going on? What's going on there? And then it would just be, and then that's where avoidance comes in. So there'll be mums who won't go near their baby.
Okay.
Because
it's too scary.
It's too scary. And they think it's safer for the baby, even though they're never going to do anything. And I always knew somewhere in the back of my mind, if I stopped being a mother or mothering in the physical sense, I might never come back. I did everything. I did every feed, every change, every bath.
So actions versus thoughts.
There was one point where I was so tired and so unwell. I remember changing his little nappy and literally I had like a smartwatch on. My heart rate was like 135 and I was literally shaking and I'm trying to do the tabs and I know what I'm doing. I know how to change a nappy.
Sure.
I've done it a million times with my nieces and nephews. I've done it a million times with my son. It just wasn't connecting. But I was thinking, okay, if I can't be here for him mentally, I'll be here for him physically.
And did anything bad happen to your son?
No, never. Not once. I mean, there's stuff that, like, it's that thing, isn't it, that anyone who says that they haven't, like, knocked their kid's head on a on a door or, or when you're putting them into the car or something like that,
God,
then you're
I
lying.
fell down the stairs.
Then you're absolutely lying.
Yeah.
So, of course, it's like those bumps and things, and then they learn to walk and they're falling over and then they just become mini, and he's sort of in his, like, dodgem phase where he just, like, runs into walls now. I marvel in that because when I watch him doing that, I love how unanxious I am, if that's a word.
I can imagine hearing you talk about that level of kind of anxiety and fear.
But I think not just the level of the intensity, but the unrelenting nature of it. It just didn't stop. My brain wouldn't stop. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't do anything because I was in another world, basically, inside my mind.
How does perinatal OCD manifest?
Well, this is the thing. So when the OCD sort of came up, two things happened. One, as my husband and I looked into it and read actually what OCD is and what symptoms are, especially in women, and you can have mental compulsions, which is exactly what I was doing.
Okay.
I wasn't a hand washer. I wasn't an oven checker. But that's what I was getting asked by the NHS. So they kind of had a flow chart. Do you constantly check light switches? No.
Okay.
Do you constantly wash your hands? No. Do you have to run back into your house because you think you've left the oven on over and over? No. And then one of the nurses more or less sort of said, "Oh, if you could just say yes, that we could, you'd get on the right thing." And I was like, "But I don't. But I can tell you 1,000 other compulsions that I do that you can't see." That was really interesting because people, I think, as it went on, and it went on for a really long time, obviously, physically, I wasn't sleeping.
Yeah.
I wasn't eating. I was basically watching a horror film 24/7. Obviously, that begins to show after a while. I looked like what I was, that I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating.
Yeah.
That was really interesting. But my husband and I were just, how did we not see this before?
If I asked your husband
you should get him on.
how he experienced you, what do you think he would say?
I think he would say he was losing me. Though he'd known me for such a long time. Before our son was born, we were together 16 years.
Okay.
We've been together 20 years now. We knew each other really, really well.
Yeah.
And he'd always known, as soon as, that's what I'm saying, when we looked into the OCD stuff, and then we looked back over our time together, he was like, "Oh my God." I was just going, "And listen to this bit." And then I'd read it out and he'd be like, "That's you." And I was like, "I know." It was about ruminating and getting stuck and going over and over and over and asking for the same reassurance over and over and over and over again. Is that person mad at me? Have I done something wrong? Constant. But I think because it was so intense after our son was born, he said there was a time he was really scared when he looked me in the eye and I wasn't there. I kind of remember being at the back of my own mind trying to reach out to him, but there was so much stuff in the way
Yeah.
There was so much fog and noise and just horrendous stuff going on that I couldn't reach him either. And he was like, that's when I got really, really scared. But now we've learned about OCD together. Now we're learning about ADHD, autism as it pertains to me. It's all sort of new, but it's all making sense.
So you're on the assessment waiting list, correct, for autism and ADHD assessments. What have you learned? What is making sense?
I've learned that the NHS assessment system doesn't make any sense. I've learned that.
Tell me about that process.
Well, I mean, just the length of time, I mean, is the biggest one. I've been on the waiting list for 14 months now. So I just rang, not expecting like they were going to go, yes, it's next week, but can I just double check I'm still on the list? So for autism, it's another 18 to 20 months from now. And for ADHD, possibly 12 months. But I'm definitely on those two lists. So that was good to know that I haven't been.
And you have to do two separate assessments.
I have to do two separate assessments. What's funny about the ADHD, well, it's not funny, in a dark way it's funny, but is that you've given a process of trying to get an assessment, and that process is the worst possible way you could possibly ask a person with ADHD I think not getting through the form to access the assessment is proof enough.
Yep.
Because if someone I know who's very neurotypical sat down and like a friend of mine or my husband or whatever just sat down, they just fill the form out.
Yep.
And it'd be like, you filled the form out, don't even worry about it.
Yeah. And in one go. And you've done
And in
it.
one go. But then what comes with what I've learned about this stuff is that all this stuff that I would sort of carry shame or a bit of self-loathing on a really low level possibly of like, why can't I just fill this form out?
Yep.
Why can't I get to the end of it? Why can't I finish things? What's wrong with me? It would just be that low level, just that all the time. Like, why can't I? Why? And it's like, I know a lot of people say to me, why do you need that label? Why do you need to know? And it's a really interesting question. And I understand that a lot of people don't. They don't need that. They know who they are and that's fine. I think I went through something particularly horrible, particularly traumatic. And since then, I've been trying to understand my brain better. I'm 40 this year. And I just want to know why. And I also want to know this okay. Like I can take the sense of responsibility that I have all the time of not being more like other people, not more better, that's a terrible sentence, but just like I said, just little low level, everyday around the house stuff, having to put the washing on 4 times because you've left it in the washing machine and because you've forgotten, which then can piss off the person that you live with because it's like, these have been in the washing machine for 3 days, they stink, we have to put it back on. Just constantly not finishing things, leaving things open, leaving, all that kind of stuff all the time. I think that low level everyday stuff gets to you over a certain amount of time. And I think
it compounds.
over like 40 years, it certainly. So I would like to know, I'd like to know more about it. I'd like to know why. I'd like to know if there are things I can do to help or improve it.
Do you know what? On a really baseline level, and I was diagnosed autistic and ADHD in sort of late 2022.
Okay.
So I'm still pretty fresh to all this. But really, if I boil it right down, it's done 2 things that I want for anybody out there who is on a waiting list or has just been diagnosed or has been misdiagnosed. Number 1, it gives me some answers. And that's incredibly empowering. Because then number 2, I get to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And so because I'm aware, then I can take responsibility.
Yeah.
And, I'm 42 and I had no idea. I had no idea about autism, about ADHD. I'd never heard neurodiversity. I didn't know anything.
What was the catalyst? Like, what made you go, oh, maybe I should get this checked?
Ironically, it was podcasts.
Okay.
But it was a really slow, like a seeding process, I would call, to kind of go, oh, I'm hearing this guy talking.
That's ringing quite a few bells.
Oh, I'm having a little Google. Oh, I'm finding myself doing a little NHS questionnaire. Oh, hold on a minute. Our 3rd daughter's due in a couple of weeks. Let me focus on
Now's
that.
not the time. Now is exactly the time.
You know? Oh, I'm now having a call.
Should I find out the core of my whole being?
Exactly.
No, I'll put it off for 5 years.
Yeah. And so it was really, I think no one had ever said to me,
Yeah.
Ben, I think you're autistic.
Right.
Or Ben, I think you're ADHD. Ever.
No.
And I saw my first psychiatrist at 9.
Wow. Okay.
And I was in our rehab, from 18 to 25. So never.
Yeah.
Ever.
With me with like OCD, just not even on the that's something else. That's for someone else.
Yeah.
That's nothing to do with me.
And OCD is cleaning.
OCD is cleaning and being
neat.
super neat.
And ADHD is little white naughty boys, and autistic people like trains. It's that kind of like real stereotypical stuff that we're trying to break down.
Yeah.
So there are some studies that show this crossover actually with OCD and autism, 37%, and ADHD, about 15%. I wondered if you'd noticed any kind of crossovers based on looking into, I guess, the correlations between, repetitive behavior, some of the hyper focus and the kind of, intense special interests, some of the impulsivity, or just that repetitive side of OCD crossing over with ADHD and autism. Have you looked into that?
I have heard that there's a lot of crossover, and every time I bring up the autism or ADHD assessment, it's like, oh, but you've got OCD, haven't you? That's a kind of, they kind of go hand, and there's a lot of crossover. They go hand in hand. Weirdly, I think with my traits, I've got lots that cross over. So like the repetitive listening, hyper focuses, listening to the same stuff, watching the same stuff, being intensely interested in one thing, and then not really taking in the rest of the world, reading situations in that, like, I can read really nuanced, emotional something's going on that's not being said, but then have no idea what is actually being said.
Yeah.
None of that.
Yeah. I can feel a room change.
I can feel, and then I'll go, God, that was weird. And then everyone's like, what are you talking about? And then it'll transpire that, yes, something did.
Yeah, but you don't know what you didn't figure out what it was.
It's almost like on a vibrational level, like on a sort of like a wavelength. But then I find there are some really contradictory things, which I'm really trying to wrap my head around. The kind of repetitive nature, but then not being able to finish anything.
Yep.
What does that mean?
Yeah, there is this incredible push and pull and tension, specifically with, autism and ADHD. And I'm biased to obviously saying that, but I want to do the same thing over and over again. But then I'll never do that. I'll stop. I'll find something else and never do that thing again.
Never do it again. It's only
could
the
be
things,
food, could be music, could be whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's this weird, like, I want to wait. I want to be patient. I want everything to be slow and structured and logical and analyzed. Boom.
And then super impulsive.
And then, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. I've just changed my mind. We're going to Rome. And then I feel like my husband's got constant like whiplash. Just like, we're not going to Rome. And I'm like, yeah, no, I've just had a real dip in mood. We're going to Rome. And he's just like, and then half an hour later going, well, I don't want to go to Rome anymore. Just, this is, it's constant.
I've worked it out. We need to go to Reykjavik.
Yeah, but I already know like the flight numbers. There's real overlap, I think, with the repetition and the liking the same things and the need for not control, but to know what's going on.
Yep.
And to have that same structure in place. But then, big one I have that's contradictory is being a people pleaser massively, but then not being able to fully listen to something someone says. So I really want to listen to someone who's talking to me because I want to please them.
Yeah.
But I also feel like I've got 4 trains on 4 different tracks and I'm just dipping out at this one a sec and I've gone and I've come back in. Oh God, what were they saying? I don't know what they were saying, but I really want to people please, but I wasn't listening. And so that's an odd one.
I think what you're talking about and what we keep hearing about, I guess, on here is we have this, because it was all originally medicalized, we have this idea that everything is in silos. And obviously we used to think that adults couldn't be ADHD.
Yes, yeah.
You got to your 16th birthday
That's
and
right.
then da-da.
Yeah.
And we only thought men could be autistic and like all this.
Yeah, all this stuff.
But also now, as evidence, you're on 2 waiting lists.
Mm-hmm.
You're not on 1 waiting list.
No.
You're on 2.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those waiting lists has over 200,000 people on it for the first time ever, autism, across the UK. The other one has up to like 8, I've heard 22-year waiting times in some parts of the country for ADHD. Come on, get a fucking autistic on this to go, why have we got 2 waiting lists, guys?
Yeah, is there any crossover here? Also, people with ADHD don't really like waiting for stuff and for filling out really nuanced forms and having to explain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's have a process designed by neurodivergent people.
That would be lovely. That's a great idea.
You know?
Has anyone thought of that? That would be great. Just get a few of us in a room.
We have talked to lots of amazing experts on here, so I know I'm not like sort of just coming up with some crazy idea here that we don't have this siloed model.
No.
We don't, that every single brain on the planet is different. Doesn't matter about neurodivergence, whatever. And so guess what? Everyone just has their own spiky profile. And you have your kind of like your strengths, your challenges. Yeah, I got a bit of that and a bit of that. And it's okay. I don't need lots of letters after my name. But actually, I just have an understanding that this is where I sort of sit.
Yeah.
That doesn't need 600 assessments and...
No.
Yeah. How do you think your autism shows up for you?
What was lovely about with the autism ADHD thing, when I decided to go for it, it was such a byproduct of everything else that it was kind of, I didn't have time to have hang-ups about it or ruminate on it. Okay. It was like, I'd like to know this and see if this is connected to the OCD. And because I'd been so vocal about the OCD, because that had kind of empowered me, that I was very open then about talking to like friends and family in real life. I'm going for an ADHD diagnosis. And the main thing I got back from people was, you're not autistic, you've got ADHD. So then you're thinking, oh God, now I'm wasting resources and time. Yeah. Now I'm taking up a place on a list that it should go to someone worse than me.
You're not that bad.
You're not that bad.
My friend has got a son and he's really autistic.
Yeah, exactly that. And then when you learn about, especially women, and how can you get to 40 and be a kind of sensible, well-educated woman and not know? And it's because I've spent, since I can remember, I'm ruminating on stuff that I know probably most 6 or 7-year-olds aren't, now that I can look back. Hiding, masking, trying to be what I think I should be doing at this point, not quite understanding what's happening. Whereas now, it's throwing people off, I think, I felt in my life, because I'm going, I don't understand, what do you mean? And they're like, well, I just mean, this is happening and you want me to do this, I'll do that and then you'll do that. Great. Whereas before I'd have gone away going, what am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to, what was that?
Yeah, and not say, really stress about it, really worry, overly ask my husband again and again and again, what did they want me to do? Do you think they were mad at me? Have I done exactly overdoing what I should be doing? So if they want me to pick up some milk for them, I'll do an entire 80 quid shop, drop that off, put it away for them, which I'd never do with my own shopping, by the way. Yes. Like overachieving all the time. So in school, did really well in school, overachieving, working hard to make it look like I'm not working hard. Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
And so then when you see people now, they're like, but you did great in school. You were always one of the, because I'd spent all night. I spent all night trying to look like it had just come to me in the day.
Yeah.
You know, just because I'd been obsessed with it. Like watching a TV show when I'm 10 years old and not being able to stop playing the same 3 minutes of that TV show over and over in my brain for weeks and weeks at a time. I remember people just going, God, it's mad how you can watch a film and then just say the script straight away. It's like, yeah, because it's in my brain on a loop.
Yeah.
You'd be able to as well.
Yeah.
If I gave you a CD of dialogue and asked you to listen to it for 24 hours solidly, the next day you'd be able to tell me the lines as well.
When you got that reaction from family and friends, What did you then do?
Oh, so now you're trying to go down the autism route. Now you're trying to go down the ADHD route. You tried to pretend it was OCD. It's all a disorder where you doubt you have that disorder. Is so meta. Like it could in a year's time, I could come back and they could go, no, you don't. You're not. I'd be a bit surprised if that happened, but I don't know. I think with OCD, you're always looking for answers. You're always looking for reassurance. You're always looking for someone to put a full stop on the end of a sentence and finish a thought. So maybe I'm doing that and I'm hoping that someone will go, you're autistic, and I'll go, the end. But that's not going to be the end. I'll have to live the rest of my life. But
well, some might say it's a bit more like the beginning.
Yes, which I'm hoping, which is where when with the perinatal OCD, I thought it was the end of my life. I thought it was over.
And how is that now?
It hasn't changed. The way I think about it and the way I think about myself has changed. So I get those thoughts pop in all the time. And I go, no, I'm okay. I'm good. I've got it. Thanks.
And this is the shrug?
That's silly. It's the shrug.
Yeah.
Which I try not to do physically because then otherwise I'll turn it into a compulsion.
Okay.
Because what I was doing a lot when in those early days was shaking my head or clicking.
Okay.
Because I'd be doing changing his nappy. Thought would pop in. Make sure you don't touch him inappropriately or do anything wrong or let him roll off the table or anything like that. So that thought would ping in and then immediately I'd go to stop it.
Okay.
To shake it away. Physically shake it away like a sort of magic 8-ball.
Yep.
Onto the next kind of thing. Or I'd click. I do that a lot. Just thinking I was helping myself.
Yes.
Because a horrible thought would pop.
Sure, trying to find a way.
I'd see him roll off the table and go splat on the kitchen floor and I'd see it so vividly and I'd hear it and I'd smell it and it would everything and I'd go, don't want to see that. Don't want to see that. And so when I started learning more about OCD and then going to like OCD therapy, I had, compared to my mental compulsions, I had very few physical ones.
Okay.
And so shaking those physical ones off helped. The real mind fuck for me, I think, with OCD and trying to get better and to understand it and to put therapy into practice. How the hell do you stop a thought before it pops into your head?
Are we in control of our thoughts?
No. That's what it felt like I had to do. It felt like I had to hold back the tide, basically. Can you stop the tide coming in? And it's like, no, I can't because I can't be everywhere at once. I can't. The shoreline's too long. I'm pushing back this bit, but the rest of it's coming.
Yes.
And it was all that. And it was about learning to just let them be, to come in, not to be kinder to myself. And I don't mean that in a wanky way. I mean that in an actual, genuine, like, don't talk to yourself how you would never talk to somebody that you love.
Yep.
Like if my best friend was sitting in front of me and she was talking about herself like that, I'd cut that out straight away.
Yep.
Why am I letting myself get away with it? Why am I judging myself for every single thought that pops into my head? Don't think of a pink elephant. All you're going to do is, like, you've just thought of one. You've just seen one in your brain. Just actually learning to observe, let thoughts just come and go.
Yes.
Not attach any judgment to it, any moral value to it.
Yeah, what do they say? You're not your thoughts.
You're not your thoughts. And the more
you can't go to prison for your thoughts. That's the other thing they told me.
But that, I mean, to the point where when I was really, really ill, of me going, I'm going to go to the police station and hand myself in. And my husband going, what are you going to say to them? I'm just going to say that I can't stop having horrible thoughts about bad things that might happen to the baby, and I'm worried, so sick. I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't think about anything else. That's what you're going to say to the police. What do you expect them to do with that? I don't know. Maybe like it's like a pre-crime, like my Minority Report. Like maybe there's a special cell they can put me in where people think about crimes
in the pre-murder phase.
Just what do you think is going to happen? And it's just, but it's, you want it to end.
Sure.
That's all it is. You want it to end. Like I'm gonna section myself. How do I make this end? Where do I go where someone will lock me up, give me an injection, anything to make this end to make this. Started looking into shock therapy, anything. I remember watching Homeland and that Carrie was on lithium. What's that? Let's give that a go.
Yeah.
Anything to reset me to factory settings. That was a real sort of stopper in my recovery. I'm really lucky with my husband in that I've got a very, very good outside person who can, without judgment, tell me, because he knows me so well. He just said to me, "You're rose tinting it. You're thinking of this time before this happened, that you were some happy-go-lucky, perfectly adjusted, got your shit together person, and that might have been how you presented more, and you're not presenting that way now, but nothing else has really changed. You know, you were these things before. Okay, admittedly, these are very heightened. It's severe at the moment, but all of this stuff was there before. You ruminated like crazy."
Can you accept that? Can you hear that?
Yes, I can. At the time, no.
Yeah.
No, we were brilliant. I was brilliant before. I was so happy before, and now I've gone mad and I'm miserable. And there's only those two things.
Yeah.
And then I remember reading out a thing saying, there's this thing called black and white thinking. And I read it out and my husband went, doesn't apply to you at all. But it is. And I spot myself when I'm doing that black and white thinking.
Are you quite literal?
Very, very.
How was April Fool's Day for you?
It wasn't too bad. I did a joke for April Fool's a joke which, on social media, which then everyone took really seriously. So then I'm like, oh God, have I got April Fool's wrong? Just ridiculous.
I hate it.
But I'm constantly checking with him, what did they mean by that?
Yes. Good at reading between the lines.
Was that a joke? I think it was a joke. I'm almost certain that was a joke. What did they mean? What did they mean? My husband still jokes about it now. I was in drama school. My housemate and I were moving into a new little flat. And we met the landlord and he gave us the code for outside the building, right? He said, Rain, you can't give this to anybody. And my boyfriend was with me, who's now my husband, at the time. And he said, and of course, you're not going to give it to your boyfriend, are you? And I was like, no, absolutely not. I won't. And so then later, when he said, what was the code again? I said, no, I can't tell you. He told me not to tell you. And he went, are you joking? And I was like, no, he said outside, do not tell you. He said, Kim, it was a joke. He was doing a sort of wink, wink. Oh, you're not going to tell your boyfriend the code. And I was like, and I never did.
And so how's that?
I never did. And he still brings it up.
How is that with acting?
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I was saying yesterday that when I used to not understand the direction, I would kind of fake it. But now when I'm on set and the director says something or somebody says something to me and I don't quite understand, I'll just go, what do you mean by that? And they'll go, just if you could just do a take with a bit more vulnerability. And I'll be like, okay, that I understand. Fine.
Yes.
That thing you said before was a little bit foggy for me. I think I know what you meant, but I'm not entirely sure. So let's 100% make sure.
And how does it feel to now be asking that
Great.
kind of? So good, isn't it?
So nice.
It's so good.
It's so nice. Like because do you know what it is? I've put it back out into the world.
Yeah.
I haven't internalized it.
Yes.
I haven't taken that doubt and that worry and that what did that mean and what should I do and all that and then just hidden it. And then you're expending energy on the outside going, yeah, no worries, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, do you want to do another take? Sure. Whilst inside going, what are you going to do? What are you going to do in this take? You don't know what they mean. To then just sort of having it and then just pushing it back out going, what?
Yeah, because in the nice possible way, like, what are you saying?
Yeah, what are you saying? Why am I the one who's constantly trying to figure everything out? Actually, what do you mean? And then sometimes it's really funny. I'll get the reaction of, what do I mean?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, they didn't know either. No one knows. No one knows. We're all winging it. No one's got any answers. Yeah. Everyone is just a basket case walking around trying to pretend that they're not. Yes. And once you see that, my God, it's so liberating. And just freeing, and it just gives you so much of your day back. I can't tell you the time I've gotten back with not doing that stuff.
Do you feel more like yourself?
I haven't got as many Kims, if that makes sense. Before I had a very this is home Kim, this is with my boyfriend Kim. Actually, to be fair, with it, he was the truest one, which is difficult for somebody.
Yep.
Because if you can only be your true self in front of that one person, that's a lot for that one person all the time.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's sort of love language of, I feel so comfortable with you and so safe with you that I can just be miserable with you because I have to pretend with everyone else.
Yep.
So in a weird way, it's like the highest compliment, but in other ways, it's like, it's a lot for them, and I can see that.
My wife, is not neurodivergent, and I am 100% myself with her.
Yeah.
And that means you get the shit as well.
You get a lot of this.
Yeah.
You get a lot of this because also if you're trying to mask the shit from everybody else, it's exhausting.
Yes.
And when you're with somebody that you love and trust and makes you feel safe and who sees you, when you can let that fall away, it's just like, ugh. One of the biggest learning curves in my OCD and in our relationship was learning that I'd been asking for reassurance and he'd been giving it to me.
Okay. In a kind of enabling
just everything
type way.
But not in a, we didn't know that.
Sure.
I didn't know that what I was doing was a compulsion, and he certainly didn't know that what he was doing was reassuring or enabling. But when I read about that, and then when I worked with an OCD therapist on that, I had to come home and say, you can't reassure me.
How was that?
It was really hard. It was really hard. The one thing he had was that when I was like crying my eyes out going, I think I'm broken, my brain's stuck in, it's like a CD track that's stuck in a dark place, and it's just over and over and over and over and over and over and over. He could go, Kim, it's not real. It's not, I know you better than anybody. I wish you could see how it's not real.
Yes.
I wish I could just take it away from you and you could just be yourself again. Or hug me and tell me that it's going to be okay. Tell me that I'm not any of those terrible things that my brain's trying to tell me I am. And pretty much overnight, with a very concerted effort, he stopped doing that.
Okay.
And it was horrible. It was really horrible. But
like
I will
cold turkey.
Really cold turkey. So the one person that I was getting any kind of relief from, but that's what the trick is, because it's never enough.
Okay.
So he'll tell me that I'm not any of those terrible things, but then 5 minutes later I need him to tell me again. So and then for him, he's leaving me hanging.
Yeah.
I'm spiraling, crying my eyes out, holding my baby, and he can't go, it's going to be okay. He couldn't do that. But I will say that it was the thing we noticed the biggest difference with as quickly. So within like 6 weeks of that, say, of solidly, with effort, me not asking, him not giving, it started to change because I couldn't rely on that reassurance. So I had to see it through myself.
So the pattern was broken.
The pattern started to break. Yeah.
Why did you feel to talk about this so openly and publicly? Like in real crisis?
Yeah.
Why did you feel that was important?
That's not hard at all. There was nothing else.
Okay.
My life was looking after my baby and trying to fight my brain in that crisis, sort of, especially the first year, going into the second year. I had no life. I did nothing else. I couldn't really watch TV. I didn't read books. I didn't enjoy anything for 2 years. There was nothing else. And as it went on, and it wasn't only that I wasn't getting better, I was getting worse.
Okay.
That it clicked that I can't live like this forever. It kind of just became a known fact to me that I probably wasn't going to survive this. In the sense that you can't live like that.
Sure.
You just can't. So in the same way that you want it to stop, like I'll hand myself into a police station, or I'll ask to be sectioned, or put me in a coma. And that's the other thing I kept saying, just put me in a coma. Just put me to sleep, knock me out, just so I can get some respite from my own mind. And when none of those things were ever going to happen, then the final out, if you will, in like that suicidal ideation was, there is an out. I mean, it's a very final, very definite full stop out, but at least it'll stop. So I'll cling on for as long as I can. I'll spend as much time with my family as I can and my son. I'll get him through the first year. I'll set my husband up so he knows what he's doing with the baby. I'll make sure he knows where all the things are in the house. You know, like I said, I might be messy, but I'm the one who knows like where all the, you know, where's the stuff for the car?
Yep.
Where's the bill stuff? I'll set all that up so that when I do kind of exit, they'll be cool with it.
They're all sorted.
I'll make sure all the financial stuff's taken care of. The house is taken care of. Buying like a year's worth of nappies. Stuff like that.
Yep.
Buying clothes that'll for him for the next 5 years. Did a lot of that.
But that is all part of autistics, the stats, you know, suicide is the second leading cause of death for autistics, right? So that is really real.
Well, it's the leading cause in mothers in the first year after birth.
Really?
Yeah. So if a mother dies in the first year up to giving birth, there's the highest chances that it's from suicide.
Of autistic mothers?
No.
Or just
all
mothers?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Which I didn't know. And when you start learning this stuff, you're like, how do we not know this stuff?
Yeah. Are you born with OCD?
No. I mean, not in that sense of your blood type, your eye color, but you're definitely born with, I think, genetic predispositions, genetic markers that mean you're more likely to manifest those traits, you know, especially, I mean, I can see it in my family, elements of OCD, ADHD and ASD that I can now only see because of everything I've learnt. Autistic people are more likely to
there's a lot of overlap.
A lot of overlap, ADHD, OCD, all that kind of stuff. And now I've learned more about it. And now that I can see it more objectively because I'm not in that crisis trying to like, you know, I can just see it for what it is. I definitely see it in my family a lot.
Because I'm interested in when you break down some of these words and then you put lenses like, okay, look at traits of autism or ADHD or addiction. There's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of compulsion. There's sort of quote unquote an addiction to something that feels like you have to keep doing it.
It's really interesting because I still live in a valleys town in South Wales. I've lived there for my entire career. I never moved. And there's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of that stuff in those kind of ex-mining towns and all that. I remember just clearly knowing that I should never start because it would be a problem.
For you.
Yeah, like I never really thought much beyond that, but I knew that everyone smoked. It was like a cool thing to do, but I knew not to do it because I knew it would become a thing for me. And then it became that with drugs in like drama school, university, that kind of thing. I never ever did it because I knew if I did it, it would become an obsession or an addiction. So I never did smoking, drugs. I knew not to.
Yeah.
Because it would become a thing.
Yeah. But do you see that repetitive behavior in terms of like actions? Do you know, if you're listening to the same song a million times or like, do you see that play out? Come on, let's hear it.
Oh, God.
I see you.
I've listened to the same audiobooks every night for the last 20 years.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Wow, what are they?
Agatha Christie.
Oh, amazing. But you were in Marple, weren't you?
Yeah, but...
How was that?
I was in Marple, I was in Poirot, I won Mastermind at Agatha Christie. And everyone's like, so great, you know so much. It's like, yeah, no, I know a lot about it. When you're living with someone who's not neurodiverse, my husband, he'll be like, we can't watch this again. We can't watch this series again. You can't watch this episode again. I've got a playlist. So when we get into the car and it's like one of us will put our Spotify on, he goes, I'll do it. Because I've got a playlist of the same 16 songs that I could happily listen to over and over and over again. And he's like, how do you not go mad? Like my brain throws enough surprises at me as it is. So if I can listen to this 3-minute song over and over again, where I know I'll experience the same content and the same feelings, that's lovely. That's 3 minutes of loveliness for me. Watching the same TV shows over and over and over again, so that when I'm an actor and I meet actors from those things, I can tell them their entire script. That comes across weird. That's like,
I'm just going back to the
creepy.
fact that Agatha Christie was neurodivergent, or they believed because they believe she was
Do
dyslexic.
they?
Yeah.
But also with the OCD element to things of, say with an Agatha Christie, the puzzle being solved, there being an answer.
Yeah.
You know, your everyday life, just day to day or with big decisions, there's so rarely an answer. You have to make those choices yourself, and you're never really going to know if they were ever the right ones or the wrong ones or a little bit of both. Everything's so grey in the real world. And then when you get these stories that are in a country house with 10 people,
Yes.
someone's murdered, one of those people did it, who did it, Poirot knows all.
Yep.
Here's the answer.
Yep.
Everyone's happy.
Nice framework.
Lovely.
Nice structure.
Great.
Cluedo
Perfect.
style.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Absolutely ideal, because everything else is so grey to me.
Yeah.
And that is so black and white. One of the things when I was really, really ill, I couldn't watch TV. I wasn't watching it. I was seeing my own thing. One of the things that started to pull me out of it was watching Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And I'd come home and my husband and I would watch that.
Okay. Every night.
Every night. And I think we did that for about a year.
Wow. Okay.
Like every now and again, he'd try and watch something else. And then I'd just be like, this is an unknown quantity to me. I don't like it. Stop it.
Yeah. Change it.
Change it to something that's unchanging.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think with change, years ago, I did a job for a whole year. It became a joke. Kim doesn't like change. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. That came up with the autism. Are you resistant to change? And I think having a baby is the biggest change that you could possibly have in your life. Your life
changes everything.
It changes everything. Your life is never the same again in the most wonderful ways.
Yep.
Think of anything that you do in your day. Think about going for a wee. If you don't have kids, you go for your wee.
Yeah.
If you do have kids, that's a thing. Like you're holding a baby to have a wee. You're whatever. You've got the door open. You're like, when I go away now for work and I'm in my little kind of rabbit hutch trailer, I can pee by myself with the door closed. And that's like, it's like a real treat. It's a real treat, but it affects everything. And I couldn't do the things that I now realized. I become dysregulated very easily, and I realized I had certain behaviors that would stop that. So I would sleep. If my brain became too much, I would just go to sleep.
Okay.
Even for an hour. And it would reset it. Can't do that. I'd go on a 5-10 mile walk with my dog up on the mountains and forests in Wales. You wouldn't see, like 3 hours later, my husband would call me like, where are you? I'm like, I'm in a forest. Can't do that.
Not without preparing for an expedition.
Yeah. Reading is a really big thing for me. I read really fast, and I easily read like 2 or 3 books a week of utter garbage. My husband will caveat that with. I'm not reading Tolstoy, but I just read very fast, but it gets me out of my brain.
Yep.
Can't do that. You can't do that either. So all of these things that I would do to regulate myself or to bring me back to zero were gone. Were all gone. And then I was just spiraling.
Yeah, so you didn't have those sort of same coping mechanisms.
No, all my coping mechanisms had gone. And I found the change really, really hard to deal with. And I felt really silly for it, because I thought, if I tell anyone in this, they're going to go, well, of course your life's going to change. I'm having a baby. And I was like, I knew that. Like the rational, logical part of my brain knew all that stuff. The night before I went into hospital to have the baby, I was going to sleep and was thinking, this is weird. This is the last night. Like, I'm going to have my bump, and it's the last night that it's just going to be the two of us and all this. And I put my Agatha Christie audiobook on, and I remember the thought pinging in, will you be able to do that with a baby? That was it.
Yeah.
I spiraled out from that because will I not have that?
Sure.
Will I not have... Because to me, that's like silence. To me, that's quiet time.
Yes.
To me, that's like a little bit of peace. And if I've got a baby, because there was this little kind of next to me crib, and it was all ready for him, and it was empty, and I'm thinking, there's going to be a baby there, and like tomorrow or the day after, will I not be able to listen to my audiobooks? Because then, I can't put headphones in because I need to be able to hear him. And I think when you have a kid, when you have a baby... Which is amazing, by the way. I don't want to be like totally down on it. Like, he's amazing. He's like my little bud. And we are now where I never thought we'd ever be. But when you have a baby, you can't be selfish in that wonderful way you were before.
I am not an expert
Yeah.
and I'm not a psychologist.
Are you not? Is this not therapy?
I'm afraid not. But I've met lots of autistic people. One of the things common to many of the autistic people that I've met is I find a real shared sense of humor with.
Yeah.
And that's what tells me that in my world, in my head, you're autistic because
You're getting the vibes.
firstly, I feel like I'm totally able to be myself.
Okay.
And you're a stranger that I've just met.
Yeah, we just met.
Right.
This
and we're
is-
in this
is
weird
real.
room.
We just met, but I know exactly what you mean. I'm not putting on any.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to think. I'm just answering your question.
I don't know why I'm saying that to you.
No, but that's great.
I've just told you that I think you're autistic. I mean, that's
Thank
actually
you so much.
rude. Thank you so much.
Is that like, do I get a certificate now? Can I use that? To the NHS, like,
I'm
accept
afraid
that?
Ben Branson's view doesn't count for
That's cool.
The
No.
second thing that I wanted to say was, how long, tell me, just to darken the mood again, how long was this nightmare going on?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
For the first 2.5 years
Yeah.
of your son's life.
Yeah.
Why did it stop?
It didn't. I just stopped letting it bring me down,
Mhm.
which is the easiest thing to say in the world and the hardest thing to put into practice. But it took months and months of chipping away at a little wall, just not doing a compulsion, not beating myself up for that thought, not being super judgmental, letting it go. And I've kind of figured out what it is. It's not beating myself up, but not letting myself off the hook.
Yep.
It's a really
Like that.
fine balance, because you can't beat yourself up all the time. And you can't, you know what, if you're feeling a certain way today, that's okay.
Mm,
But on the flip side of that just because I want to spend all day in bed with my head under the duvet because everything's very loud, doesn't mean I can.
yes.
And doesn't mean I should.
Yes.
But it's okay, I feel like that.
Sure.
But you can't hide away.
No, you can still take some responsibility.
Yes.
And
So I feel like it's a constant thing at the moment. Well, all the time. I've always felt like that. But I'm trying to put it into practice.
this idea that, and this is some of the problem people have about labels and getting assessed,
Yeah.
is sort of, oh, you're just making excuses. And it's like, no, it's an explanation,
Yeah.
not an excuse.
Yes.
I've seen you say
Yeah.
that you think there's some magic in your squareness. And I think that's just a brilliant turn of phrase on the
Yeah.
whole square peg, round hole side of things.
Yes. It's that whole kind of like excuse versus explanation, superpower versus, it being hell to live with. There are elements of it, of whatever my neurodiversity ends up being in the end. Just like, I feel like I'm like alphabet soup. It's OCD, ADHD, ASD, all that kind of stuff. But whatever it ends up landing, there are elements to it that undoubtedly help me in my chosen career.
Hmm.
I did a one-woman play. It was a 90-minute monologue. I became so obsessed with it going wrong that I literally spent 10 hours a day rehearsing and then 5 hours in the evening with it on 4 walls in a flat I was in, and just going like, and then my husband came to stay with me for the weekend and he walked in and went, "Oh,
What are you
my
planning here?"
God. Oh my, it was full Carrie from Homeland, like just stuff everywhere. But I became so obsessed with not being able to memorize it and not being able to do it that I just deep dive. I was just hyper focused. There was nothing else. And it meant that I could do a 90-minute monologue because I knew it inside out,
Yep.
backwards.
Yep.
I could do it, literally do it in my sleep. That's great for a
Mhm.
short amount of time.
Hmm.
I think the thing with it being a superpower is that if Superman doesn't want to fly, he can stop himself. If he doesn't want to flip a car, he doesn't have to. You can't switch it off.
Hmm.
I think what I'm trying to say is that not that there are benefits, I think that's the wrong word, but there are certain traits to my neurodiversity that in certain situations
Yeah.
really help me out.
Yeah, you've got skills.
I've got skills.
Yeah.
Repetition is not a problem for me in
Yeah.
the real world, not a problem.
Yeah.
Because I've got like 40 years experience of doing that mentally. That's fine. I just looked right down the lens and it was really creepy. No one wanted that. But also, I haven't got my glasses on, so a little bit cross-eyed. Sorry. Oh, God, this has gone terribly. No, so there is that, but you can't turn it off.
I really hope you're not going to leave and replay this conversation in your head.
No. I mean, I will.
I know, but I'm
that's
saying
fine.
it. Okay, that's
But
okay.
it's going to be fine because I'm going to go, that's okay.
Okay.
Like maybe a year ago, was certainly 2 years ago, 4 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do this.
Okay.
3 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to get through it without bawling my eyes out.
Okay.
2 years ago, I would have left thinking, oh my God, this is it. This is it. I've ruined my life. I've ruined my career. No one's going to employ me again. No one's going to be able to look me in the eye again. I've been too honest, blah, 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 blah. A year ago, I would have still thought that, but been, okay, but that's okay. It's going to be okay, sort of. Now I'll leave. I'll replay this again, but I'll be like, yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's who you are. I think the thing I remembered I wanted to say earlier about having a kid is that when you're maybe in your 20s and your teens and you're looking down and it's all about you and your world, suddenly you've got someone else to look after and you have to look up.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to look up. And I would often walk down the street reading books or be in my own world and walk into trees and lampposts. I did that all the time. It just feels more free and truthful. And if you're looking down, you think everyone's looking at you and talking about you and judging you. And when you actually look up, you see that everyone else is doing that.
Yeah.
And there's a real power in being who you are and the good and the bad with that. And what I found with my being honest on Instagram is that now when people come up to me in real life, I don't feel like I have to put a front on because I think they go, oh, I love your Instagram or whatever. And it's like, you've seen me cry then, so don't worry. So it's not like, oh God, I look awful. Oh God, it's like, well, I mean, compared to that, this is fine. So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And there's an honesty to it. That's
and you've held yourself accountable in that way
just lovely.
without realizing
and I've let
it.
so much go. I'm still learning stuff. I'm still trying to like figure stuff out. I think I think the day you stop figuring stuff out is probably the day you're dead. But it's allowed me to like come at my job in a completely different way, in a very logistical way. When I'm on set, I can go, I don't understand what you mean by that. I can say, this is very overwhelming. Can I have a minute, please?
Yep.
And I'm going, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Whereas the power of going, can I have a minute, please? Who the hell do you think you are taking a minute to yourself?
A minute?
Whereas now, I'll take a minute. I can do headphones. I can do whatever. I can just, what am I doing? Okay, back in the scene, back in the character and go for it.
Yeah.
But also going through something very traumatic like that and having to really look yourself in the mirror and be okay with what you see back means that I can go deeper with characters. I've just finished a job that was it's quite dark themes, really hardcore, called Under Saltmarsh. And I think it's going to be great. But I went there in such a non-judgmental way. I just really searched out the dark corners of the character in the moments where you're delivering lines. It was like, don't worry about what you look like on camera. Don't worry about what people on set are thinking. Don't worry about any of those things. Be ugly in the truest sense of the word, in all ways. Like, I mean, be ugly. Like, ugly cry. Just shine a light in those like dark corners, in those ugly dark corners, and just do it. Just be it. And it was great. And it was really, and it released something in me, I think.
Do you think it makes you better at your job?
I hope so.
Being more yourself, ironically.
Ironically, yeah. People are always like, oh, you're autistic, but you're an actor. It's like, oh, what? I like to pretend being other people all the time. And I can, I can do a play and say the same words for 6 months. A lot of it, like it leans into it a lot. But I think you get so used to masking in real life and picking up on social cues and reading people's faces and what does that mean? And are they doing, I'll do that with my face and that kind of thing, that it lends so naturally to acting.
Yeah.
And to being someone else for a while. And when I was very, very unwell, I think my son was about 6 months old and I had to go back to work because it was the second and third series of a show I'd already done. I hid it. I would be up all night crying my eyes out. And then I would go to work all day and I'd have so much makeup and hairspray and everything else going on that I just hid it and I pretended that it was fine. And then when I started being honest online on Instagram, I'd come into work and they'd be like, I didn't know that that's what was going on. But the interesting thing about it, the only respite I got in that 2.5 years, and I mean the only 30 seconds of break, was when I was filming a scene, when they'd say action.
Yes.
And I had to be somebody else.
Yes.
They'd say cut, and I realized that I hadn't been thinking about any of that other stuff for 30 seconds. And then it would flood back in. But something definitely like physiological happened in that I was using a different part of my brain or something was happening. But honestly, it was the only reprieve I got because I could get out of my brain for a bit.
We've had guests, with Tourette's saying when they sing, they don't tick, or when they're in the bath, they don't tick, or
it's
these.
Really incredible. There's something I think actually on a physiological thing is happening. Then that, I'd love to see the sort of data for it, but something definitely happens when you're performing in whatever way that might be.
Yeah. What do you think it means to be neurodivergent, neurodiverse in today's society?
I think that we wouldn't have been having this conversation 5 years ago. I'd never heard the word neurodivergent. My niece is autistic. That's why I got involved with the National Autistic Society. And it was about making the world a kind of kinder place for her. And I'd say sort of 10, 15 years down the line, it possibly is. I think there's a long way to go. But I certainly think that, say, now I could take my niece somewhere she's sort of become nonverbal in the last couple of years. But I could certainly go to a cinema and say, my niece is autistic, and they would know what that meant. Or there wouldn't be as much judgment there as, say, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago when my sister-in-law would try and take her swimming. And she hated the feel of the towel to dry off. And she'd be screaming in the changing room. And you'd get other people coming over going, you need to sort your, she's really naughty. She's having a tantrum. You're letting her get away with murder. All that kind of stuff. I do think there's a long way to go. Like I said, I told people in my real life that I was going for an autism assessment. And their first thing was, you're not autistic. Because I don't present in that way. And because I've spent a very, very, very long time masking it, and that mask becoming part of my personality. Like, where does one thing end, So I understand why people say that, possibly because they haven't seen that side of me, in the same way that people used to be, you haven't got OCD. You haven't got OCD. You're really messy, and you don't care about germs.
Sorry, just to be like, who the fuck do these people think they are that they can say
I think they just,
yes or no
well,
to
it
something?
Just doesn't fit in. It's like you saying to me, I'm wearing a purple jumper right now. And I'm like, no, you're not. I think it's that simple for people. And that they have this idea and you're not it. I see certain neurodiverse traits in my son. I see it through a lot of my family. He's 4 now. I'd like to think when he was 24 that being neurodivergent is easier, that being yourself is easier in 20 years' time than it was 20 years ago. I hope. The thing with autism, especially, you'll never find a pair. Yeah, I'm never going to be like anybody else's. We like to compare, which is like the whole education system, the whole NHS. It's like we like to say, this is a typical 5-year-old.
Yep.
Let's measure this 5-year-old up against that. I think it's attributed to Einstein, but it's not really Einstein. That kind of, if you judge a fish, it's
by its ability to climb a tree.
By its ability to climb a tree, and it's that. I think we just liked things to fit into boxes, and I don't know. It's that thing, isn't it? When you're a kid and you think your parents have all the answers, and then you become a parent and you realize, oh God, they were winging it.
Yeah,
it's
got no idea.
It's that everyone's winging it. Everyone's muddling their way through and getting through the day and trying to figure stuff out.
Oh, and you talked about it right at the beginning, Kim, and I wanted to say it then. The biggest lie in the whole world is this idea that people have got it all sorted.
Yeah.
It's the biggest lie.
Hugely.
What do you say to people out there listening who are in this early stages of whether it be pregnancy, whether it be post-pregnancy, and who are listening to you and going, holy, that sounds like me. What do you say?
I would say that I know two things right now that you're thinking or feeling. One is that yours is different. Your thoughts and feelings are different. Maybe other people can tell people about their symptoms, but I can't tell anyone about mine. Mine are worse, mine are darker, mine are scarier. That's not true. That was my big thing. Mine's different. My OCD is different. My thoughts are different. Other people can go and tell a midwife or a health visitor or a therapist this stuff. I can't. Mine's really bad. Mine's really, really bad. And they'll take the baby away from me. That's not true. And the other thing that I know you're thinking, because I'd never felt it before in my entire life. I'd obviously had periods of depression or high anxiety, but I'd never been totally devoid of hope ever in my life. And it was gone. There was nothing. I was desperately searching for something, a flicker of something I could just hold on to that would show me that I can get to the other side of this. And there was nothing. It was just a void. And that will come back as soon as you start being kinder to yourself. It'll be tiny. It'll be the smallest glimmer in the world, but it will come back. So I know those two things to be true, that you think you're worse, you're different to everybody else, and that there's no hope for you.
Yeah.
And both of those things are just lies that your brain tells you.
Yeah. 2 in 100, 2% sounds really low, but when you've never heard of it before and you're like, actually, this is 2 in 100 and 4 in 200, etc., like it's still a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Actually.
And also, it's 1 in 5 for perinatal mental illness.
Wow.
So that's 20%. That's
Yes.
20% of women that you work with, your sisters, your girlfriends, your wives, your daughters. 1 in 5 is not small. It does present in 20% of people. That's really high.
Yeah.
That's really, really high. And I now know that I've had intrusive thoughts we all do. We all have intrusive thoughts. I thought there was something wrong with my brain, that things would pop in, that visions would, like imagery would pop in and be so strong as to play on a loop for weeks or months at a time. I'd never heard the phrase intrusive thoughts until about 6 months after I had a baby. So I would have been 36. If I could have known that phrase, God, when you just put hashtag intrusive thoughts in, I put it on all my stuff on Instagram.
Okay.
Just because I want people to, what's that? What does that mean? And then click it and it'll open your mind up to a whole world of it not being your fault and it not being something wrong with you.
Yeah, and you not being alone.
You're not being alone. You're not alone. And I felt so incredibly alone for such a long time because I thought mine was different and I thought I was hopeless. And you're not alone. I also put that on most of my Instagram stuff.
Okay.
We are not alone because we're not.
We've not had anyone on the show talking about OCD, talking about perinatal. And so not enough people clearly know about this.
No.
Even though it happens. And so excited to get this episode out there.
Yeah.
And for people to hear this and for this to be kind of out in the open.
Well, I secretly made myself, sort of unconsciously almost made myself a promise right back in the thick of it that I didn't think I would get better. In fact, I planned that I probably wouldn't be around. But if I ever did, if I ever got even a little bit better in that I could live with this, or I recovered, or I would be out the other side, that I would be that person that I so desperately Googled, tried to find in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Someone like me. And there never was. There never was. I never found anything. And so now if you put in intrusive thoughts, perinatal OCD, scary thoughts in early parenthood, any of that stuff, I was too scared to Google half of that.
Sure.
But now if you do, maybe something will pop up of mine that I've said. The best messages I get are from people who go, I've just seen your video. I've just called my midwife. I've just called my GP. I've just told my husband. That is the best. That is the greatest gift anyone could give me.
Yeah. So the last thing we do, you'll be pleased.
Yes. Is it money?
Don't be too pleased. No, it's not money. The last thing we do with our guests is I give them a green dot badge. And these are badges of support for neurodivergence. You don't have to be neurodivergent to wear it or have it, but they're a little green light to be yourself. Who would you like to give yours to?
I feel like I should be sort of big with it and be like...
Don't judge it.
NHS Wales, so that we can get like right to choose, which we don't have in Wales that you guys have in England. Or no, Keir Starmer, the big hitters. Actually, I want to give it to my husband because he... that came out of nowhere. Oh, sorry. Just because he's not neurodiverse, but he's had to navigate this new world with me, and he has, and he's been really open with it, and I had to learn, and he hasn't judged me, and he's just, I think because I don't ask him for reassurance anymore, I also don't confide as much, and he's just been incredible, really incredible.
He sounds like an absolute legend.
Oh, now I look like a anyway, I'm not a dick.
You're not a dick.
You're a dick. What? Anyway, no, but
Do you know what? The best thing someone said to me once was, what someone thinks of you is none of your business unless they choose to tell you.
Yeah, he can right off. Cause now he's made me cry. God, I'm sick of it. Give me the badge. Goodbye.
Goodbye.